Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
But you also had people that were very fine people. Very fine people on both sides.
And the aliens would mind meld and give them the technology. They're bad aliens. So are you surprised the Nazis were influenced by demons?
No, if demons are real, I would definitely think they'd be on the side of the Nazis.
Yeah.
McDonald's is connected to the Clintons. They chop up the bodies and put them into the sausage and hamburgers. People are being cannibalized. Look it up.
And I'm watching CNN talk about this as violent white nationalist protests. We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful, you know?
It's Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
Welcome to Yeah Nah Pasaran, a show about fascism and its gravediggers. I'm Cam Smith.
I'm Andy Fleming.
And this week we are joined again by the ladies from Tinfoil Tales, essential podcast listening if you want to understand cookery the Australian way. We've got Sauce.
Hello.
And we've got Sandee.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having us.
I guess there's been a little bit going on in the world of Australian conspiracizing since we last spoke to you a few months ago, not least of which are a number of court cases. I was wondering if you could update our listeners on what happened with Monica Smith versus the Victoria Police, because it seems like she won, and yet I've seen a sort of a failure lap around the right-wing media.
They're always winning, even when they're not really winning. Technically, she did have a 2 out of 3 victory. Contrary to what she believed, though, she didn't win because they were targeting her for her political views or her bus. The first one was because they didn't actually articulate why she was being charged properly. So it was just a technicality, really, as opposed to she was a journalist who was being tortured by Victoria Police. But yes, no, she won. Her problem was she was offered a settlement prior to the case commencing, so $15,000 payment, and she would be able to continue to say that she thought she was wrongfully arrested, and they would continue to say, no, you weren't. She didn't agree to that. She wanted an official apology. She actually wanted a sit-down meeting with the police chief as well, just to air her grievances. Obviously, they said, yeah, nah. So she decided to roll the dice and trot herself off to represent herself in the county court. And she put on quite a show. But unfortunately, she probably spent a little bit too much time on her journalisming and not quite enough time on the major part of her case, which was actually a damages claim. So when you represent yourself and you say, I didn't really suffer any emotional or physical harm, that's probably not a good start.
No, probably not. And so she's ended up with a bit of a bill.
She has, because unfortunately, if she got $4,000, but because they'd offered her $15,000 from the date that she rejected the claim until the end, she was liable for the state of Victoria's costs. So her cost order was about $250,000.
And I'm guessing the state of Victoria didn't send lawyers who'd been to the law school of YouTube.
No, they didn't. They were very well represented by 2 barristers, 2 consulting solicitors, and an association of other people who wandered in and out of the court.
So couldn't Monica have availed herself of one of the lawyers that haven't been struck out to represent her in court?
Well, she is 1/3 owner of a law firm in Reignite Legal, but unfortunately she had a bit of a falling out with the lawyer from Reignite Legal. So, yeah, I think what happened was when the offer was made, because originally it was Morgan and Monica's case, but when the offer was made, it looks like Morgan took the money. Her lawyer said, you should take the money. She refused, and then I reckon he went, well, I'm not representing this in court. So she was on her own.
Always take the money. Also not taking the money we've seen the case of Moira Deeming v. John Pizzuto winding its way through the courts. It continues for another week or so from the time of broadcast. What's your take been on how Moira and John have been faring as they are cross-examined by the best of the best?
It's funny, isn't it, when you watch a court case, when Moira was in the stand, I think everyone was like, yay, take that. But now that it was John in the stand, everyone's like, yay, take that. It's like, is there really going to be a winner in this case? I'm not sure. I think there's just losers.
I don't think the Victorian Liberals are faring very well.
No, they're coming across as very petty, very disjointed, deep rifts, which I don't think really surprises anyone, but I'm sure they're not loving the fact that their text messages and emails are being shared on a YouTube channel. I mean, we love it. I think it's funny. But I'm guessing they don't.
And perhaps also the secret recordings.
I just can't believe, like, through all of the stuff that they've put up there, that they're just ignoring your messages. Andy, where's your tweets? We're seeing everyone else's tweets.
I know a couple have snuck in, but not too many. And certainly, I don't know, too many of the parties are paying too much attention to the well-documented record regarding a number of these figures, unfortunately.
I think that's the most frustrating part is, I think it was today, Chrysanthou said something, or maybe it was the other day, about how people, like her views were publicised by, mainstream places like CPAC and the women's forum. And it's like, oh my God, this is such an ecosystem. And I think it's just really difficult. I don't think people understand like how all this works.
Yeah, I'm not sure if, I do hope that the Beak will have an opportunity to familiarise himself with social media, as it's called, and the various personalities that employ it in order to promote their perspectives.
Really difficult, like all of this. Oh, but they weren't there for us. And it's like Sandee and I were there that day.
Yeah.
And like they were all one big group. All of this, well, there was us, and then there was the Save the Children protest, which wasn't a protest. And then the Freedom People, and, we weren't all together. And it's like, but you were all mingling together. It's the same people that show up to all of these things.
Yeah, as an observer, like that was one of my first events that I went to, and I was just standing there, and it was so clear that you had them and then you had the rest of the people. So on one side, you had your trans rights activists, and the other, I think it was CAF on the other side, that coming up the street. And so the police were keeping all of these people away. Meanwhile, on the steps was the women's rally, there were the Freedom People, and then the Nazis. And it was clear, like we were standing there in front of it watching. We could see the full view. It was clear that they were all on that side. And from anyone's perspective, they were all part of it together.
Mm.
There was just no one standing up saying, oh, excuse me, can you not be here?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, or asking, because I feel like, the Kelly J. Keane Women's March, they were the ones that were there. They had the permit and all that they should have had some sort of police liaison or something directing the police to say, hey, those guys aren't with us. Can you move them on and get them away? But there was just none of that. And they were up there, they were together, and then they were mingling. Like, yeah, it's hard watching this court thing playing out on YouTube, because I've been watching it a little bit here and there when I can, and them just denying and having like, it's almost willful ignorance. Like, no, it was clear they're not with us. And it's like, yeah, but from my perspective as someone who's fairly new to this, it looked like from the general population, from the general people, it looked like they were with you and that you accepted them there because you liked their banner. Like that's just how I walked away from it. That's what I was thinking at the time. So, yeah.
Well, I've genuinely searched for examples of any kind of opposition or antagonism to the Nazi presence, whether anyone said to them, look, go away, and I can't find any. I'm not sure if either of you observed any.
There wasn't any.
There wasn't. In fact,
they were shaking their hands. They were taking photos with them.
And we're talking about here when we say they were, it was the freedom people. So they were very excited. They were like, oh, these guys in black are on our side. Yeah, I like your banner. You're against these people. You're with us. You're with us. Yeah, high fives, you know, shaking hands and interviewing them. And, you know, so I'm not saying like the people from the Women's March were doing that. That was the freedom people. But then the freedom people and the neo-Nazis moved over to the Women's March and were standing there talking and mingling within themselves. So they'd gone and moved over to the Women's March. But did anyone from the Women's March say, excuse me, get out of here? Because if that had been a group of trans people who'd walked over and mingled beside them, they would have been moved off.
Absolutely.
That's the part I just can't reconcile in my head.
I also wonder, I mean, I think it would have been an easy win, really, for someone to jump on the mic and say, you know, these fellas are not with us.
Yeah.
But they failed to do so. I don't fully understand why.
And look, the reality is that they kind of are, I mean, not necessarily the ladies that day, but at the next Women Will Speak, as opposed to Let Women Speak, we saw Matt Treahy give them his sound equipment. And they let him speak.
And then later on, when it was pointed out to them that, you know, Matt's got a history with neo-Nazis, they just doubled down and supported him.
Yeah, they just refused to accept it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
interesting.
I don't think that's surprising on the one hand, but on the other, I don't think it plays well with people outside of those circles, really. Most people, you know, aren't going to have quite the same receptivity as they may towards these kinds of fellas.
Oh, yeah.
I think what it has really shown me, particularly this case, is how much of a void is actually growing between judges in court and maybe the real world. Like the judge asking, like, what's a tweet? And it's to me, that's a little bit scary. That
yeah, it seems like he's a bit behind the eight ball on that stuff, but also I'm not sure how it seems like this is maybe one of the first real brainswormy defamation cases in Australia's storied history of defamation. I guess we had the Mark Latham case recently, but, you know, normally in a defamation case, there's, you know, there might be a media company on the one hand and, you know, some sort of legitimate businessman on the other.
Yeah.
And they've said something they don't like, and it's all fairly simple. It's just a matter of, you know, what's the truth, and did you believe it was the truth? Now we're dealing with, well, the things that some people believe are very, very strange, and did you believe them in good faith, or are you acting in bad faith? And I don't get the impression that the judge is quite on top of how cooked some of the people involved are here.
I don't think so. And I also don't think, he understands how they all interconnect and how that ecosystem kind of exists around them to allow them to say these things. And then it almost gets to be legitimized because, well, you know, this person's the CEO of CPAC. So we must, you know, that has to be mainstream. It's like, does it?
Well, speaking of CPAC, it is very soon, this weekend perhaps even. Kelly J. Keane will be attending, visa pending, I believe. I did see a comment that how are people going to say that Kelly J. Keane is some sort of far-right figure now that she's rubbing shoulders with the very normal people of CPAC.
Correct. I mean, she's rubbing shoulders with Tofar. She has to be normal. Last
year, I can't help but recall that one of the speakers at CPAC was Holocaust denier Elijah Schaffer. So I don't know if that's helping beat the allegations. Yeah, but you mentioned Topher Field is speaking at CPAC. There's Monica Smith will be there.
Yes. Isn't what's her name going to be there as well? Carly
Soderstrom.
Yes.
Yep.
There's a little bit of a. These are people I associate with COVID, to be honest.
Yeah,
and the catching thereof. Is it COVID such a big hook in 2024 for something like CPAC?
I don't think it's going to be COVID as the hook. I think I heard a little bit of Tofar at this weekend's misinformation, disinformation brouhaha. And, you know, his things changed to look at me, I was one of the first examples of what happens with misinformation and disinformation. I had the police at my door, charged me with incitement. So I think it's back to more that kind of. So they've repurposed their lockdown story.
Yeah, that's old now.
Yeah, into a people like me are the first ones that they're going to come for. And, I'm willing to do anything. And Monica's going to go, they tried to silence me before and I went to jail for 22 days.
Yeah, I mean, Monica at least has that, although that was a very self-inflicted jailing. Yeah. Topher faced almost zero consequence. Is that right? For any?
Yes, and one of the funniest videos was Topher when he was recording the police, coming to his door to tell him that he was going to, that he needed to come down to the station. And the cop said, like I told you before on the phone. Just because he'd staged the whole thing. He did the big, oh, what's this? And he walked down the hallway recording. And he's like, why are the police at my door? And then the cop says, yeah, just like what I told you on the phone.
He's like a daggy dad. He's so weird.
He's just so irrelevant. And I also noticed in the background of one of the lives that he had all of his DVDs and books on a little pallet, and he was selling them to all the people in the park.
Speaking of parks and speaking of the misinformation and disinformation rally on the weekend in Sydney, seems like there are some cracks appearing. The Libertarians, what were they formerly known as? The Liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
Perhaps not the greatest branding move of all time, given that they did get, I think, at least one MP in just off the back of people getting confused between them and the Liberals. But anyway, I'm sure they know what they're doing. They tried to hold a misinformation/disinformation rally on the weekend, and it was gate crashed by the Aussie Cossack from within the Russian consulate. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. What happened? What was the big fight about on the weekend?
So originally, Cossack did a flyer for a march to Speaker's Corner to talk about misinfo and disinfo. Very quickly it vanished and was rebranded as a John Como Wilson fake union flyer for the same thing. Then maybe a day or so later, another flyer appears, this time the Libertarian one, also at Speaker's Corner. So Como organised a busload of pensioners to travel with him from Brisbane. They went overnight, so they arrived and they went to the park, and Cossack's little minions were there, setting up a stage and some tents for a barbecue. Then Crackers Kelly appears with the police, and the police start telling them they have to take down all their structures because they don't have a permit. So Como's old age pensioners decide to tell Craig Kelly what they think of him. And at one point, Como's shouting, off you dog. You're a dog, Kelly. You're a dog. And then someone calls Craig Kelly a pedo. Crackers then calls them scum, tells them off and that he'll sue them for defamation. But then something miraculous happens and they make peace, and then it turns into dueling microphones where they each take a turn at having a guest speaker.
That's the defamation case that I want to see.
Oh, God, I can't wait. I can't wait. Can you imagine?
But yeah, they had two different stages as well, all set up.
Yeah.
And then they were trying to say that they had a good turnout, but I think I saw you make a comment there, Sauce, that you noticed it was more Como John's crowd.
Yeah, it definitely looked like more people were there for Como John than were there for the Libertarians. But I mean, all told, there was maybe, 200 people there.
And then the name calling continued on Twitter, and in hilarious fashion, Craig Kelly did a post. He's like, oh, these bloody cookers.
And then Cossack decided to stage a little live with Como, who's there going, I never said a bad word. No one in my group said a bad word against Craig or any of the people. He was just wanting to fight us from the minute he arrived.
did notice a little comment from Craig Kelly along the lines of, if the Aussie Cossack, if Simeon Boykov wants to come down, we can work this out, which I thought was a little bit of an unfair card to play. Is Simeon ever going to come out of the Russian consulate?
No, never. Never.
I wish I could read Mr. Kelly and Mr. Boykov, but they've both blocked me on Twitter, which I think is outrageous. I'm going to organise a rally, I reckon.
Well, I just think it's hilarious that of all the people to be holding rallies about misinformation and disinformation, Aussie Cossack, if they can't see the irony of that, I don't know if they ever will.
Well, even with John Wilson, I think people need to realise, what he stands for. So he's got this little fake union thing that he's got going on. He's charging people $200 to join it. And he's doing the national strike where he's getting people to pledge to stop paying their bills and stop paying their rates and their mortgages and going totally sob-sit stuff. He's a really troubling person because, his followers are going to go homeless and God knows.
Some of the comments in that Telegram channel are bleak. People going, my bank is telling me I owe them $25,000. What do I do next? And people are like, just send them another letter saying that you don't contract, or send a bill of exchange. And they're like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And it's like, oh my God, these people are going to start losing their homes. They're going to have debt collectors, sheriffs at the door, and it's bleak.
Yeah, bill of exchanges too. They're just a nothing. They're just a nothing. It's a whole gimmick scam thing. So they're trying to say, if we get enough people to do this, we're going to change the world. We're going to make a difference. He's leading people into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you think people in these straits understand that there may be other resources available to them, like community legal centres and so on, or are those so overloaded that there's no capacity to actually render any kind of legal assistance?
They're being taught not to trust that. So they're being taught that actual legal system is as it is. The true legal system is fake, that it's not reliable, that it's corrupt and all this stuff. So, yeah, unfortunately, unless those people can get out of that bubble and maybe step outside and hopefully accept some help properly, which is it's unlikely that they'll ever seek out some help. So how you get people out of this predicament, we don't know. But it's going to be something that we predict is going to be quite a lot of people. We're already seeing it. So, yeah, what the answer is to that, we don't know. I think the best answer that we have at the moment is to talk about what's going on and hopefully save some other people from actually joining it.
Yeah.
People to think twice.
Is it time to take over the councils?
Mate, they've already done it in 2 councils in New South Wales.
Really? Oh, do tell.
Yeah, Sos can tell you all about this one.
Yeah, from what we can tell, as things are still votes being finalised, it does look like there's 2 councils in New South Wales that are now, I think the one in Cessnock there's one actual real independent and then equal numbers of cookers, for want of a different word, and traditional type candidates. So I feel sorry for that one true independent who's going to have to put up with an awful lot from people. And then the other one, I want to say it's at Shoalhaven, I think.
Okay.
I believe there might be 6 plus the mayor in that council too, which I think will probably give them the majority. I also noticed in Queensland, Gympie, which is a little bit of a hotspot for grandmother lore type activity. They have just the count because they have got a couple of alternative councillors. And I noticed the other day that they are now removing fluoride from their water. So that was a little bit of a tell, I felt, that what might be happening up there. So, yeah. And then obviously there's some already in WA. And we're about to go through some elections here in Victoria. So everyone should very much know who their candidates are.
Does it look like there's a bit of a contingent running in Victoria?
Yes. There's a couple of councils that I would be... You remember Aidan McLinden, who ran against a highly successful campaign against Dan Andrews in the seat of Mulgrave.
Well, was Dan Andrews the MP for Mulgrave? No.
True. He got him eventually. He got his man eventually. He's put together I think there's 11 of them on a ticket out in Whittlesea. So, yeah, they've got like at least one in every ward. There's a few in the city of Kingston that I would be taking a closer look at if I lived there. And then there's a few others dotted around the place. Some are very easy. Look, to be honest, some of them aren't hiding it. Some of them are running on a platform of 15-minute cities are the work of the global elite cabal, so you don't have to look too far. Others aren't being quite as open, and it will take a little bit of a look, but I recommend people that they should speak to their local candidates, send them an email, ask their views on some things, and know who you're voting for.
Just finally, the last time we spoke to you, there'd been a strange event at the Polish Club in Rowville, a melding of, I guess, the conspiracist right and some sort of darker anti-immigration feelings. We saw some of the same people come together recently at a restaurant in Melbourne's southeast. Matt Treehey, Neighbours star Damien Richardson, to talk about what is happening to white people, essentially. It seems like that has had a very negative effect on the venue that held the event. It looks like they might be in a little bit of trouble with the community. Can you tell us what happened there?
So they obviously, off the back of their, they would say, successful meeting in Rowville, they put up some posters for a second event. This time they kept the venue name a secret. You only got the name, I think, if you purchased tickets. They also said that there would be no live streams, but they can't help themselves.
Yeah.
They can't help themselves. So, look, there's a live stream. They had actually gone down and put plastic on the windows.
As if that's not sus.
Like, I don't know, if it was my restaurant, like even if I didn't know necessarily what they were coming to do, if they started putting plastic up on the windows, I'd be like, what's happening? Like, why are we doing this? So the night opened with Matt welcoming everyone to said venue and made a point of saying that he had gone round a few other venues and approached them and was very upfront and honest about what they would be talking about. And I think 3 or 4 other venues had said, no, like, our venue's not about that. So he made a point of saying he had done the same thing with this venue and that the person basically agreed with them. So we should all support this venue going forward. Then obviously the venue where it was has gotten out. There was a lot of local community dissatisfaction with that. A few posters started to go up and some questions asked. And I thought it was very interesting that the owner did a post to say that it was the manager had made a poor choice, which wasn't really what Matt said. The Matt said it was that he'd spoke to the owner. So I think they closed their doors for a short time. I don't know if they've reopened their doors, if they've just quietly reopened, but yeah. I mean, I would never go there if I lived in that area.
Perhaps a little lesson for people in the hospitality biz.
And look, I actually feel bad imagine being the wait staff or working in the kitchen and you've just shown up to that shift and you're having to listen to that kind of content.
Yeah, they were actually shown up in the footage and there was like at one stage, I believe, maybe perhaps an Indian woman, I'm not really sure, but, having to serve these people and it gave off really uncomfortable feelings just viewing it. You go, oh no, that's not okay. So to do that to your staff as well is really just deplorable.
And I think what was interesting on the night was Matt had said that after the last event, someone approached him at the end of it who wasn't happy with the way that they'd spoken about First Nations people. And then on the night, after a question or a statement was made by someone else said, like, why do we have to say, like, white nationalists, though? And he was immediately taken to task. So like they can say, oh, we're open to questions and we're open to people pushing back. That's two examples where people have pushed back and they're just shut down immediately.
Well, I think they've already provided the answers to the questions people might be posing, really. I don't know what sense there is in confirming the obvious, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming there's going to be a third event. I can't imagine that all of a sudden they're gonna stop.
Well, hopefully it won't be exposed.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for coming on. If people want to hear the podcast, it is Tinfoil Tales by SOS and Sandee. It is available wherever you get your pods, Tinfoil Tales with SOS and Sandee, and you can also find them on x.com at tinfoiltales_au. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Andy, that is our program. We'll be back next week.
See you then.
I fall the low, but the low one. Well, I fall the low, but the low one. I miss my baby and I miss the fun. I guess my race is run. She's the best lady that I ever had. I fall the low, but the low one. Well, I fall the low, but the low one. Robbing the people with a 6 gun. I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the low one. I miss my baby and I miss the fun. I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the low one. I miss my baby and I miss the fun. I guess my race is run. She's the best lady that I ever had. I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the low one. Why I was so rude and I speckless. I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the low one. I was drinking beer for breakfast. I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the low one. I left my baby and I feel so bad. I guess my race is run. She's the best baby that I ever had. I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the low one. I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the low one. I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the I fought the low, but the low one. Well, I fought the low, but the low one.
Keffiyehs are Palestinian scarves, and they're a symbol of support for justice for the Palestinian people. From the traditional black and white keffiyeh to an array of modern designs, explore the range and order online or drop by 3CR during business hours. Wear your support for the rights of Palestinians. Go to keffiyehs.org.au, that's KUFIYAS.org.au. A 3CR supporter.
We know you love listening to 3CR, but we also know that many of you haven't downloaded the Community Radio Plus app yet.
The app lets you tune in anywhere and share the station with your friends.
So, show the love and share the love and search Community Radio Plus wherever you get your apps.